Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thank you for listening to us today. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing all right. At work, we're going to be doing this big Phantom of the Opera 100th anniversary screening pretty soon here, and you can hear a little interview that Sarah did with me about that on our Patreon. And as of this recording, that show has sold out. Ooh. So I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know your team was very focused on meeting that goal.
Yes.
So that's fantastic.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I saw my mom today. We got pedicures. And I remembered what else I did today, which was not fun. And I was fixing the goddamn humidifier again. The humidifier that attaches to the furnace. It likes to leak, but I have subdued it once again, and I am victorious. Huzzah!
And you have also continued to spend every spare moment of your time thinking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Yeah, so I was going to take a friend of mine to see it. Unfortunately, the day that we happened to both be available was the day that it got pulled from theaters because it was fresh up on Netflix. So we watched it at their place on their TV, which is like fine, but there's just something about seeing a movie so large and like you got to see it more of the details of like the costumes or the extras milling about and stuff. So still good on a smaller screen, and my friend liked it because they have good opinions. No, that's okay. If you didn't like it, like that's okay. Yeah, so that was good. And now I have someone new to send all of my Frankenstein memes to.
It's not just me anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we saw it in theaters when we did.
Absolutely. What are we watching this week?
This week, Sarah, we are watching a movie that originally I was going to skip for the show. It is called The Couch from 1962, directed by Owen Crump. The movie has a big focus on like therapy sessions with a psychologist. So that's where the title comes from. But like, it's not a very... I feel like thrill or scare inducing title. It's like The Couch, Donna.
Yeah.
Like it's a little, anyways, when I initially took a look at this film, as a possibility for the show, came away going, I think this is psychological thriller. I don't think this is a horror movie. But one of our listeners, Kyle Marshall, requested that we take a look at the film. And so we're circling back. Not too far. This is still a 1962 film from February of that year. And we're going to take a look at it. And I guess we're going to decide whether it is horror or not.
Yeah, I think a big part of why I think people would count this as horror is its subject matter. There's murders, but it comes from author Robert Bloch, who did Psycho.
Yes. However, he did not originate the story idea. The story idea for The Couch was developed by Blake Edwards and Owen Crump.
Oh, the director. Okay.
Yeah. So Owen Crump directed this movie and produced it. Came up with the story for it with Blake Edwards, who I think co-produced it. Now, Blake Edwards is a fairly famous name in Hollywood, but he was born William Blake Crump, and in fact, he is Owen Crump's nephew.
Oh, nepotism.
It's almost like at this point in their careers, reverse nepotism, but I'll explain that. So
I feel like that still counts as nepotism.
I guess I'd have to see what the like Latin root of nepotism is. Anyways, so Owen Edward Crump was born in 1903 in Oklahoma, and he was the son of politician and judge William Jackson Crump. And Owen began his artistic career painting portraits and acting on stage in the 1920s. By the 1940s, he was a screenwriter on contract for Warner Brothers, writing World War II propaganda shorts. His third wife, who he married in 1942, was Lucille Fairbanks, the niece of Douglas Fairbanks. Crump slowly rose through the ranks at Warner Brothers, directing shorts, a lot of like documentary shorts, then into features, documentary features, and then he became a producer. The Couch would in fact be his final feature film as a director, and he had retired from movies altogether by 1971, though he lived to the age of 94, passing away in 1998.
Wow. Do you know why he stepped away from movies?
Probably because by 1971, he would have been in his late 60s.
Oh, so he just like retired?
He just retired normally. He just happened to live for another 30 years. Now, his nephew, William Blake Crump, named for the painter, was born in 1922 in Oklahoma. And when his mother remarried, he became the stepson of Jack McEdward, a Hollywood production manager who was also the son of the great silent movie director J. Gordon Edwards. So Blake Edwards, as he called himself, grew up in LA, and after graduating high school in 1941, he became an actor. We actually saw him as an actor back when he was the male lead in Strangler of the Swamp back in 1945.
Is the male lead like the dude who was the Strangler? Because he was old.
No, like the romantic interest of the girl.
Yeah, okay.
Edwards started directing for television in the mid-1950s, and his first feature film was the 1955 comedy Bring Your Smile Along, and his first big hit was the 1959 comedy Operation Petticoat, starring Cary Grant and Tony Curtis. In 1961, his career exploded because he directed Breakfast at Tiffany's, and that kind of cemented him as the comedy director of the 1960s. But in 1962, he was kind of trying to branch out and experiment with other genres, such as the thriller Experiment in Terror and the
An experiment in terror, yes, for him.
Yes. And then also the romantic drama Days of Wine and Roses. The Couch came out in the midst of these efforts. Still ahead of Edwards at this point in his career are the pop culture juggernaut of the Pink Panther series, The Party, and Victor Victoria. So this film was clearly meant to play off of the recent popularity of psychologically based films about serial killers. So Edwards and Crump hired the natural choice to flesh their story concept out into a screenplay. As you mentioned, Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho. And we talked a lot about Bloch and his biography in our Psycho episode.
That's episode 295.
Thank you. And the success of Psycho had led Hollywood to come knocking at Bloch's door, even though he'd only written the novel, not the screenplay.
Yeah, and arguably the impact that the movie had comes a lot from Hitchcock as the director rather than his story. And I don't want to seem like I'm throwing Robert Bloch under the bus. I'm just in terms of the staying power of Psycho, the visuals and the film aspect of its adaptation is what kind of stays.
Well, it's like everybody remembers Jaws the movie and not really Jaws the book, right?
Yeah, or The Meg the movie, not the Meg novel series.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, if you want to give your project some of that Psycho magic, it's probably a lot easier to hire Robert Bloch than to hire Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, especially because you want to be the director.
So after a 5-month waiting period, getting things sorted out with the Writers Guild, Bloch began primarily writing for TV anthology series. He wrote for the Alfred Hitchcock Hour and, all those kind of various thriller horror anthology shows that were on TV at the time. The Couch would actually be his first feature-length screenplay. In Bloch's original screenplay, several scenes played from the killer's point of view, showcasing his delusional state of mind, such as shop window mannequins coming to life, sexual fantasies, and also LA in the grips of a nuclear apocalypse.
Can I just say, those first two things about mannequins and sexual fantasies makes me think of like Glenn or Glenda.
Sure.
So I'm like, did Robert Bloch see Glenn or Glenda?
No, I don't think so. Maybe. I don't think it was an influence here. Regardless, these delusional sequences were cut from the film, not for content, but for budget.
Sure.
When Bloch wrote the novelization of the movie, he added these scenes back in, creating perhaps a more deeper glimpse into the killer's mind than the movie does. Our killer here is played by Grant Williams, who we last saw giving a bravura performance as the Incredible Shrinking Man in 1957. When we covered that film in episode 201, we talked about Williams' career struggles, as well as his personal struggles as a closeted gay man of religious upbringing. Universal Pictures had dropped his contract in 1959, and he had gone to Warner Brothers, sort of searching for leading man stardom. The Couch would be his last starring role in a studio film, and he would spend the majority of the 60s on TV. Williams' primary love interest in the movie is played by a young Shirley Knight, who was born in Kansas in 1936, so she's about 5 years younger than Williams. Her acting career began in 1955, and by 1958, she was contracted to Warner Brothers Television, who would let her appear in Warner Brothers movies when on a break from filming series such as Buckskin. In 1960, she had been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for the film The Dark at the Top of the Stairs. And in 1962, she would be nominated again for Sweet Bird of Youth. The Couch comes in between these two films.
Okay. So this movie is coming across as perhaps a bit of a B movie because there's a lot of relationships to television here.
Yes. The final main role in this picture is that of the psychologist, and he is played by veteran character actor Onslow Stevens. He was born in 1902, and we last saw Stevens way back in 1945's House of Dracula, where he played the mad scientist.
I am sad to say I do not remember his performance.
That's so fair. He also appeared as an army general in Them, and this was his...
okay, yeah, no, I can think of him now.
This was his final feature film.
Because he retired?
Yeah. Yes, because he retired. Again, he was born in 1902. So The Couch was released on February 21st, 1962, with an ad campaign that focused on the secrecy of the production, claiming that Warner Brothers had gone to great lengths under the code name Project Ice Pick to keep everything about this film like a total mystery. This was obviously, I think, intended to replicate the kind of success that the ad campaign for Psycho had. In reality, I don't think anyone was paying much attention to the production of an Owen Crump movie of low budget. But, you know, this was the ad campaign.
Yeah.
The Couch was released on a double feature with the British thriller Moment of Danger as the B picture. And that kind of furthers my belief that this was intended as thriller, not horror, because I think if this was intended to be a horror movie, was marketed as a horror movie, they would have programmed it with another horror movie.
So how are we watching it, Ben?
Well, The Couch got a DVD release from the Warner Archive collection back in 2011, I think. So that is the easiest way to watch it.
Okay. Well, folks, hopefully you can find a copy to watch along. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss The Couch after watching it on our couch, directed by Owen Crump from 1962.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching The Couch from 1962, directed by Owen Crump. Sarah, first thoughts?
I thought this was quite good. I enjoyed it. I thought that the actors all did a fairly good job. There's one character who I really struggle with, but that's okay. The plot kind of needs her to not have two brain cells to put together. Not horror.
Yeah, definitely not horror.
Yeah, what did you think?
So I think this probably was a very good movie in 1962.
Yeah.
I struggled with it a little bit as a person watching it in 2025, but that's not really the movie's fault.
Yeah, I think that'll be good to kind of chat about, because I found the way that they handled the story structure and characters and its treatment of mental illness to be like similar to police procedurals today.
Yes, I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Interesting. I thought you might disagree, and if it was like behind in its time or something like that. So cool.
No. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear more of your thoughts, but before we get into the discussion, let me give the plot. So the film opens on a young man calling the police saying that he'd like to report a murder that is going to happen at 7 p.m. because he's going to commit it. Whoa! We see him walking around in downtown LA on busy streets, and he ultimately stabs a man in the crowd with an ice pick and runs off. We see that he heads to an appointment at a therapist's office. So we learn that this is Charles Campbell, and he is here to see Dr. Jans. Also at the time, we meet Jans's secretary and niece, Terry, and Jans's colleague, Dr. David Lindsay.
I'm just going to be pedantic about something for a second, which is that Terry is his receptionist and not his secretary. And the only reason that's important is she makes a point of saying she doesn't have access to any of his files or his notes, whereas like a secretary would do work like that. Like they would take dictations and things like that.
That's fair. I was sitting over here thinking like, oh no, did I do the thing with the title sounds like the name?
No.
Like that you always rag on me?
Yeah.
Yes, very accurate. She is the receptionist. So we learn information about Charles Campbell at many different points of the movie, and it's a little hard to summarize because it turns out Charles is kind of an unreliable source of information, particularly when he confides in Terry. But to summarize, he's been seeing Dr. Jans every day for 2 weeks. He is on parole. He tells Terry that it's because of that he went to prison because of a manslaughter charge for his sister's death in a car accident, but we later learned that it's actually because of going to prison for rape. Now, why would he confide in Terry? Well, they have begun a romantic relationship, but it has to be kept secret because he's a patient. He kind of tells Terry how, what I have to see him for is obligatory because of this parole, and he says that I can stop any time, like kind of downplays the severity of why he needs to see someone. Through the therapy sessions, we learn that Charles rebels against authority due to a deep internal hatred of his father. And this is coupled with, the movie doesn't use this phrase, but to get it across quickly, the Oedipus complex that is unfortunately placed on his sister Ruthie, who raised him because his mother died when he was born. So we see that Charles has kind of a love-hate relationship with women. He'll make a pass at them, but claim that they were tramps and he actually did nothing. And yeah, just a very like hot, cold kind of relationship with authority as well. So in the movie, he's now killed 2 strangers, and as things continue with Terry, he lies that he has a big inheritance coming, and once that comes in, then we'll tell your uncle about us getting engaged. Ultimately, though, he goes and targets Dr. Jans to be his 3rd victim. Unfortunately for Charles, Dr. Jans lives. So Charles drives Terry to the hospital, and he disguises himself as a doctor to kill Jans. Throughout the movie, we do see the police doing fairly good police work, including wiretaps, which is neat to see. And
call tracing.
Oh, yes. That's absolutely what it's called. My bad.
Wiretaps are a different thing.
They absolutely are. As The Wire has shown us very clearly,
yes.
Different thing. Yes. Call tracing, which I don't think we've seen in a movie yet.
I don't know when like that first started, the whole like keep them on the line longer kind of like trope started. What was neat about this movie, because I doubt this is the first movie to do it, but what was neat about this movie is because we're still in the days of like analog telephones, they cut to the actual telephone exchange and show like people following physically the call to figure out where it's coming from, which is really cool and interesting.
Yeah, I really liked that part. It's in like a very small part of the movie. Yeah. But
it was neat.
I really liked it. At the hospital, with Dr. Lindsay's help, the police make the connection between Charles and the murders. So they end up confronting him before he kills Dr. Jans, and when confronted, and Jans, who in Charles's mind is his father, tells him to give up. He recedes into this little boy persona, basically. And that's the end. Now, I do want to add that throughout all of this, we do have a couple of other characters who provide a little bit of flavor as well as comedic relief. Charles is staying, like renting a room from a Mrs. Quimby. And in the house is also her daughter, Jean, who's like a young adult. And Mrs. Quimby is, if she was alive today, she would be super into true crime podcasts. And her daughter, Jean, would be super into like rock and roll,
I mean, she is into rock and roll. It's 1962. They had rock and roll.
Yeah. She's into rock and roll. She flirts a lot.
Yeah.
So she's kind of, you were describing it as like a red herring to be a victim.
Yeah. Like the whole movie, it feels like it's setting her up like a lamb to the slaughter in terms of like the kinds of things that set Charles off. And when the movie ended and she was still alive, I asked like, can you describe a victim in a movie as a red herring? Because usually it means like the fake suspect for the murderer, but this was like they're expecting you to think that he's going to kill this person and he ends up not. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end. Is there anything, any particular scenes you want to call out?
So I was just going to add that we find out that the reason why he's been killing random people at 7:00 every night is because that's the time of his appointments with Dr. Jans. And so it gives him an alibi that seems plausible, so that because his ultimate goal was to kill Dr. Jans.
Yeah.
The movie, as Sarah mentioned, Charles is an unreliable narrator because he is not mentally well. And
I think he's also purposefully lying.
But the movie keeps it really ambiguous between when he is intentionally lying and when his grasp on reality isn't good. Like he tells Terry this lie about his sister dying in a car crash and that's why he went to jail. But then later when Jans tells him like, no, your sister's alive, she's married in like Wisconsin or something, he gets legitimately upset at having to confront that information because we basically learn he had incestuous feelings for his sister. And so when she got married and therefore was like off the table, I guess, she died in his mind. Meanwhile, he thinks his dad is still alive. And Dr. Jans is like, no, your dad died while you were in prison. And he's like talking about how much he hated his father. And Jans is like, because the hate for your father is still alive, he's alive in your mind. Because the love for your sister died, she died in your mind. And he's like displacing all these feelings onto all these other people. And it is kind of complicated in the movie. Like, it made sense for you to do the recap the way you did, because trying to remember in what order we get what bits of true and false information is kind of tough. One thing I thought was interesting was with the inheritance. So there are times where we know that Charles is having difficulties with reality, and there are other times where we know he's lying. The inheritance is almost kind of more ambiguous, because what he says to everybody is that his father was a stockbroker and his grandfather was a stockbroker, and his grandfather made all this money and they had this big estate, and then his dad kind of like ran the company into the ground or whatever. And so Charles hates his father, and because his dad died, like once his legal troubles kind of clear, Charles will get this inheritance. We never see Charles talking to the people he claims to talk to about the inheritance, like a lawyer and whatnot. But we also never see anyone say that like this backstory about the rich family or anything isn't true.
Well, in fact, we get evidence that it is true, because when they sneak into an estate that looks uncannily like stately Wayne Manor, there's evidence that it was part of his family's.
Right. Yeah. It says Campbell on the estate and all this kind of stuff. So like that part's really interesting to me, because there's nothing to say one way or the other if he's lying or hallucinating about that part of things.
One thing I really liked about the movie is we get these hallucinations, but also we get these like point of view shots where like in the therapy session we'll like zoom in to his eye to kind of see what he's seeing in like these flashbacks. And in one case it's when he like the reason why he got fired from his most recent job because the secretary came onto him, and then in like reality version of him remembering, it's clear that he made a pass at her, but it's shown in the same way, so it's still not confirming which version is true. And also what I liked about these flashbacks, when we see when he was like a little boy and we see Ruthie, his older sister, and we see the dad, they chose actors who look very similar to Terry and Dr. Jans. It's clearly not, but it's close enough that you're like, wait a minute, are they? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really well done. I'm glad we both agree it's not horror, because I think it's very clear it's not. It's definitely more of a psychological thriller. I think that's just very clear from like the filmmaking, honestly, style throughout the movie. Like we talk about, we know horror when we see it. I could go into like a lot of talking about like why I don't think this is horror, but the easiest way to do it is to just say it's the reverse of that. Like if I know horror when I see it, I also know not horror when I see it. You know what I mean? Like this is not horror.
Yeah. Like the primary emotion for the audience is, you know, a little bit of thrills, but also getting your brain to go like trying to solve the mystery of what is the truth here. And like I was thinking about the way that the film emphasizes different scenes to try to describe like why it's not horror. And the scenes that it emphasizes would be the scenes with the therapy sessions, which are done very well, I think. But it's kind of like it's about trying to understand Charles rather than sensationalize and point to like, this is why he's willing to like murder people. And then the other scenes that really I feel like get emphasized in the movie are the stalking scenes. The first one I think would be closest to horror because it's also the hook in the movie. But in the second stalking scene, he is wandering the busy street and it's getting close to 7. And we keep getting these insert scenes of clocks. And so we start to feel his panic and a feeling of being frantic of like, I can't find a victim. And it truly does feel like oh man, like, is he going to meet his deadline? Rather than oh man, will they get away safely?
Yes. So one of the things I said off the top is I think this was a good movie in 1962, but I struggle with it in 2025. So
yeah, tell me more.
What I mean by that is I think it's tough to put yourself in the headspace of 1962 and consider all the ways that this movie is pushing the envelope, right? So like scenes of people being casually and randomly murdered in public, that's like super shocking for a 1962 audience. And it's just not for us anymore. Like it's still shocking that he killed a person, but the whole idea that like he would be brazen enough to do it just in public in a crowd. And the movie's very smart. Like you were saying the therapy sessions were really good. I think this is one of the most believable depictions of a mental health professional we've seen on the show so far. And clearly Robert Bloch did research. He has like some real psychology lingo in the movie at times. And I think the observation that like the way to get away with a murder is to like do it in a crowd and then calmly walk away as if nothing happened is like a really good, logical, realistic feeling observation. This movie also is probably boundary pushing in 1962 because of the way that it positions the audience to identify with and sympathize with the killer, which is what you're talking about with that scene where he can't find the victim and we're more like, who's he gonna kill? He's got to meet a deadline. So like for the first stalking scene, we are basically like over the shoulder behind Charles the whole way.
Yeah, we don't even see his identity.
Right. Or we're POV or something like that, which really encourages us to identify with him. And the whole movie's told from his point of view, basically. And I think that was probably more boundary pushing in 1962 than it feels now. Obviously, it's building on Psycho with the fact that like Charles is depicted as being very polite and friendly until he loses his temper about stuff. But I think we're put much more directly in his headspace than we were Norman Bates's headspace.
Yeah, very clearly, because we get to see therapy sessions.
Yeah, and we go into his mind and have those little mind's eye kind of sequences.
We hear his auditory hallucinations.
Yeah, and like his inner monologue, I guess you could say, in a way. And I bring all this up because I think this movie is like doing a lot of cool things that were very new in 1962. The problem watching the movie in 2025 is that the story is building to these revelations, right? As we said, like the information about Charles is doled out kind of piecemeal and out of order, and we're learning what's true and what's not. And the big grand revelation at the end of the movie, like it's been this, like we learn at the start of the movie, like, oh, he has a problem with authority and he pushes back against like his boss and his parole officer and stuff like that. Which like in the context of 1962 is like, okay, so he's James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Like, yeah, what's the deal here? And then, oh, you know, when he was a kid and he hung out with his sister, there was this person in his life that got mad that he was so close to his sister. And like, who is that person? Like, he can't quite bring himself to say. And the big, like, reveal at the end of the movie, or at least the movie treats it like a reveal, is like, oh, it's his father. He's hated his father this whole time. And I think the movie acts like this is a big surprise, and all the marketing for the movie acts like there's a big mystery and a big reveal that's going to happen that'll totally shock you. But I feel like for us in 2025, we've all seen true crime shows. We've all watched a million TV shows about serial killers. We've all seen Criminal Minds. We've all either read Thomas Harris novels or seen the movies based on them. Like the whole thing where he's taking Terry out on dates and stuff was very like Red Dragon, Francis Dollarhide to me. And so we've seen all this stuff. It's all very old hat. And so the final reveal just doesn't feel like a revelation at all, because I think any modern audience would have figured out that he hates his father like in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like basically the moment he's like, oh, there was this adult man in my life who didn't like the way my sister and I were close. It's like, yeah, his dad, whatever. And like this whole revelation that like, oh, the reason he hates authority is because he hates his dad, and he's displacing his anger for that onto these other people, like just doesn't feel like a revelation. And I get that that's not fair to the movie, because it's sort of like if you were watching a movie from 1932 where the big reveal at the end is that like, if you split the atom, it'll cause an explosion. That's just not a reveal to anyone in 2025, but it would have been super crazy in 1932, right?
Yeah.
So it's like hard, because I feel like I didn't enjoy the movie as much as I would like. And I'm trying to put my finger on why, because we always make a big deal on Scream Scene of like judging the movie in the context of the time it came out. Like everyone knows the story of Frankenstein, but I still enjoy watching Frankenstein and still recommend it to people. Why did this movie feel to me much more like, yeah, okay, I get it. And I was feeling kind of almost bored because it's like, yeah, I get it. And I think it's because ultimately the movie doesn't have a lot to say about these revelations, and there isn't much more to the movie than these revelations, and the revelations are really easy to figure out. But to be clear, I do think it's very well written. Mm-hmm. It's very intelligently written. I wasn't really expecting it to be well directed, knowing what I knew in my research about Owen Crump, but it's very well directed.
Yeah, I think the way that he handles making sure we continue to empathize with Charles throughout all of it, in the way that he like frames him and everything, like, well done. The music is really good.
Mm-hmm. It's not Nelson Riddle who did the music for the 60s Batman TV show, but it sure sounds like it at times. The cinematography is great. There's really good composition in this movie. Like, there's a shot where Dr. Jans is getting a phone call from the police about how someone has turned themselves in as the 7 p.m. killer. And Charles is in the background sort of fiddling with Dr. Jans's golf clubs. And it's in
a threatening way.
Yes. But it's a deep focus shot so that we can see Charles's reactions to the phone call as Jans is on it. It's really well done. The performances are really good. Grant Williams, once again, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, I found myself really believing that not only is he this troubled character, but that he's young enough to be playing this character.
He does this interesting, Grant Williams is 30 in this movie, but he does this really interesting thing with his voice where he kind of gives Charles this almost gosh, Batman, I hadn't thought of it this way. Kind of
truly a lot of Dick Grayson vibes.
Yeah, just this kind of higher gee whiz kind of voice that really sells you on Charles either being young or being a case of Arrested Development, where he still has this very childlike kind of sense of the world and how fair or not fair it should be. Also, something that I noticed watching this movie, it's always kind of a treat to get to watch a studio picture.
Yeah.
Because even a low budget studio picture like this one is often at a baseline level of competency and production value higher than most of the other stuff we watch on the show.
Yeah. Very, very true. A Studio B picture does not equate to a horror B movie, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And because it's Warner Brothers, it's this is a B movie, but it looks much bigger. It looks much better and more believable than a Columbia A movie kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think if it had an approach and a budget that was more akin to the B horror movies that we are more familiar with, the police might have felt more incompetent or something, but everyone felt very believable.
Yeah.
Even the character who I struggled with the most, Terry, because the character is very much an idiot, not in the clinical sense. It's such basic understanding that you don't romantically engage with patients, and she knows this rule, and I understand that she's being manipulated, but I'm just girl,
so I
do not understand. And then when there are so many we had this conversation during the movie, there are many red flags that us in 2025 see as red flags from Charles, but in 1962 for Terry, it's well, that's a little weird, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to emphasize in an alternative way than saying you don't fuck your uncle's patients. I just found myself getting so mad. That's rule number one. And also the other thing, that romance starts off with him. This happens before we come in on the movie, but it all starts off with him kind of forcing himself on her to the point where her watch breaks, and then he lets her go, whatever, and he's getting her watch fixed. And this is like a plot point in the movie as well. But then she's like, she doesn't immediately like call campus security when he just shows up randomly on campus where she's taking a night class and embraces her. Like, it's like there, and then like gives him her keys to drive home or whatever. Like, I just had so much like, what the fuck are you doing? Right. And I get that there is probably a level of like, in 1962, not all of those would have been seen as red flags. It would have been maybe questionable, but otherwise would have been like, oh, that's just how things were. I understand that. But at the same time, there's like a level of like assumed professionalism if you're a fucking receptionist at a therapy office.
Right. I think so. Yeah. I mean, so you're not wrong, right? Like, this is definitely a movie where you're kind of yelling at the screen, like, Terry, what are you doing? There is that 1962 element where people just didn't have the same awareness around like, hey, don't get into a car with a strange man who's taking you to a mystery location, right? Because like of both like the more inherent sexism of 1962, but also probably just like that, you know, this is like an era where people weren't locking their doors at night, you know, and it's just golly gee whiz and this kind of stuff. So like America hasn't been through the traumas. You don't have the publicized serial killer things like Jeffrey Dahmer or Richard Speck or the Zodiac or these things that made people realize like they had to be more careful. So there's that aspect to it. He is nothing but walking red flags. Like, it's so ridiculous. You are completely right. I mean, but also in Terry's defense, well, not really Terry's defense, in Shirley Knight's defense, who's the actress who plays Terry, I think she's really good.
Oh, yes. Yes. My umbrance is with the character.
The way that she plays Terry came across to me like someone who, especially at the start of the movie, seems very aware that Charles is a lot of walking red flags. Like, as you said, before the movie even starts, he has assaulted her. And then he pops out of the bushes and grabs her at random and super scares her. And she's really upset about it. And he's like, oh, I just wanted to hold you. And then he's like, let me drive your car to a mysterious location. And she's like very clearly uncomfortable with it all. And she's uncomfortable a lot in her scenes with him, like in the acting. Her dialogue doesn't really communicate it, but Shirley Knight's acting does. And the way she came across to me was, and it's really unfortunate that this is such a real thing.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
But she comes across like a woman who is giving in, sort of people pleasing to a man because she's afraid of that man. Like, if you know that Charles is like a little dangerous, and there's an element of that that's exciting, I guess, right? But like, you end up nodding along and saying, sure, Charles, we'll go where you want to go because you don't want to see what happens if you say no.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what comes across to me in her performance. And then as the movie goes on, the way I think that shifts is he's telling her all this stuff about himself, about his backstory and his childhood, and he's got this inheritance coming and all this kind of stuff, and he's opening up to her more. And so she feels like she's learning more about him and coming to understand him more. And because of that...
he's not that bad.
Exactly. And so because of that, she lets her guard down more and more through the movie because she thinks, oh, no, he's like a troubled young man, but like he's still like a good person. He's a polite, good guy, right? Like, again, like what's the difference between him and like James Dean or whatever, right? And so I think there is a realism there that even if it makes her a very frustrating character to watch, I think Shirley Knight really brings a realism to the point where I psychologically believe Terry. Now, obviously that original sin of like, don't date the patients. And like you point out in the movie, she knows that she's not, like they keep it secret from the uncle and stuff. But also she's like a college age ? Like young woman who is working a job, like not because she's been like trained to be, like she's doing this because her boss is her uncle. Like, she got this job as a favor.
Hey, more nepotism.
Right. And so, like, she's probably very inexperienced. She's very young. She's not bad at deflecting people because there's another doctor in the office who has a crush on her, who she kind of deflects with some grace. But, you know, it's also like, this handsome young man is interested in me, and Grant Williams is quite handsome in the role. So I can psychologically believe her, like, making that mistake, especially because of what I said earlier. Charles is so insistent, and she's kind of afraid of what will happen if that goes wrong. Like, you definitely get the feeling that, like, she didn't come to him, almost that, like, she was dating that other doctor, and then Charles kind of just muscled in, right?
Yeah, like, I hear you. And I agree that the actress does well. Speaking of the Zodiac in particular, so in this movie, it opens with Charles Campbell calling the police saying, like, hey, I'm going to...
Oh, yeah, I guess that is exactly the Zodiac, isn't it? Yeah,
well, like, I don't know. I don't recall if the Zodiac said, like, I'm going to do this, but he definitely taunts the police afterward. And Charles doesn't necessarily taunt them, but he is like, I'm going to do it again, and kind of like leaves them hanging a bit. And so I guess he does kind of taunt them a little bit, but not in the way that the Zodiac Killer does. But I was just like wanting to comment that, like, I don't know how revelatory that kind of approach of or relationship between a killer and the police is in pop culture, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I think I would like, it's interesting that this is before the real Zodiac, but I will also say that, like, Jack the Ripper wrote letters to the police in London taunting them.
Yeah, but did he call them?
No.
Did he taunt them on the phone? Sorry.
but you know what I mean? Like, so it's not
abnormal. And it's also right in Robert Bloch's wheelhouse.
Sure, Jack the Ripper stuff.
Yeah.
So why does Charles call the police? There's at one point someone who turns himself in as the killer. And Dr. Jans, like, even says, like, yeah, there's this personality type that just wants to be punished, and they feel guilty all the time, and they want someone to, like, validate that guilt, basically. So it's like a fake. It's not the real guy. But they talk about that. And at first they think it might be the real guy, because that sort of fits in with, like, well, why is he calling the police? Like, oh, he wants to get caught. I think if there's a sign that this is a very smart, very psychologically grounded movie about a serial killer that is still being made before we knew a lot more about serial killers, it's the fact that ultimately Charles has a rational purpose for his random murders.
Yeah.
Like, he has all this psychology around hating women and hating his dad. That has nothing to do with why he randomly kills people with an ice pick in crowds, as it turns out. Like, we get all this psychological revelation, but that has actually nothing to do with his status as a murderer, because we find out that the random murders were just there to establish a pattern that would create an alibi that would rule him out as Jans's murder. And I think one of the things that made stuff like the Zodiac Killer and Charles Manson and all these things that are going to come in the late 60s, early 70s much more frightening to the American public was that it was like, why did you do this? Well, you know, like,
they were there.
Like, no explanation, or not an explanation that makes sense. Like, even if there's a psychological, like, well, in my mind, it's not like a, well, I had to off this person to get the keys to this building to, you know, there's no logic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point.
And so we're not quite there yet with this movie. Like, he is a very psychologically well drawn killer, but he's not quite a total psycho killer.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? That's a joke. Okay, you didn't laugh. I do just want to say that, like, I think he wants to kill Jans because of that problem with authority. And
yes.
I just wanted to, like, make it clear that, like, he wants to do that murder because of ties to his psychology, but the two previous murders are rational.
Yes. And I think the thing is that those are the murders that are super random. And so they appear to not have a purpose. And then it turns out that they do. And the thing that ultimately makes later real world killers or even like movie killers scary is when the random murders are just that, truly random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, folks, this is not horror, so it will not be going onto the list. But if you would like to check out our episode on Psycho or any other kind of police procedural movies like Dark Eyes of London on the list, you can check out those episodes by going to screamscenepodcast.com. And that's also where you can drop us a line if you would like to contest the lack of ranking of this movie or any other ranking. And you can also email us at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com to submit an appeal or just chat with us on Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube podcasts. Basically, anywhere you want to watch the show, listen to the show. Anywhere you want to listen to the show, you can do it by subscribing to our RSS feed. If you'd like to help the show out, you can give us a rating or a review on the podcasting app of your choice. Share the show on social media. Talk to people about it. Word of mouth is how we grow our audience. So if you know someone who's into classic horror, let them know about the show. And if you really enjoy what we do here, we would super appreciate it if you headed on over to patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast, where you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. At $1 a month, you'll get thanked on the show. At $5 a month, there's all kinds of bonus audio content. And at $10 a month, there's bonus written content. We had some cool stuff go up in October, as we always do cool stuff in Halloween times. So if you want to check that stuff out, it's all available at patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we're back in B monster movie territory with a movie that has a monster who on the poster looks like Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four. It's called Hand of Death.
Do you mean The Thing?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well,
but not the movie The Thing.
Yeah, not the movie The Thing.
The movie's
We've
called
already
Hand of
watched
Death. Yes.
We will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.